Hello, Accelerated Math 7-8 students. We are working in Module 14, and today is Lesson 15. The title of our lesson today is called, come on, we gotta get the paper to focus. Here, if I can make it bigger. There we go, that might help. Okay. The slope of a non-vertical line. The slope of a non-vertical line. Today we will discuss what slope is, how it is determined, and how to check it. The question that I want you to be thinking about is, what does slope mean, and is there a specific way to remember it? Things that you need to know is that over the last couple of years we have talked about the fact that in math things have many different names. And so something to keep in mind is this multiple name idea. The first thing that I want you to think about is, how many names do you have? Okay, I have several. I have Aaron, I have Mrs. Nelson, I have Mom, I am called Auntie. So right there I have at least 4 or 5 different names that are all describing me. Well, in math we have that same situation happening, and math has specific parts that have multiple names too. The reason that we're talking about this is because, believe it or not, you already know what slope is. It's just been called something different up until this point. The slope is the steepness or the slant of a line, okay? And so I want you to think about if you have the horizon and you raise the right side of the horizon just a tiny bit. So let's draw a picture of this. So here's the horizon. And let's say you raise that a tiny bit, and so the new line that you will see goes up. And then if you raise it some more, then it goes up again. And if you raise it some more, it goes up again. And every time you're raising it, you'll notice it's at the same point that it gets lifted, your slant or your steepness gets higher. So right here, it's not very steep. It's pretty close to the horizon. It's pretty close to the ground, right? Here is middle, and then all the way up here, that's a pretty steep slope, okay? So the slope is the steepness or the slant of the line, and we know it as many different names. One of the names that I have been telling you for a while now is called rate of change. Another name that we have used specifically with rate of change is unit rate, okay? A name that we've most recently been working with is the slope. The other name you know about it is the m. So if you have this equation, y equals mx plus b, then you know the m is the slope. It is also the rate of change. It is also the unit rate, okay? The other thing that you need to know about describing the steepness or the slant of a line is, what is its rise compared to its run? And so we've been talking about that a lot, where today, or several times in the last couple of days, you've been having to tell me what is the relationship of the slant of the line. And so we have said up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And so that is what you rise divided by what you run, okay? Or it could go the other way, how much you go down and how much you go to the left. So rise over run is also another name for slope. Okay, so if we go back to our goal, the goal said, today we will discuss what slope is, how it is determined, and how to check it. So these are what they are. So if you're ever reading on a math test or a math problem and it's asking you for the rate of change, you need to remember that that's asking you, how did the slant of the line or the steepness of the line change? If they ask you for the slope, they're asking you, how did the slant or the steepness of the line change? If they're telling you what the m is, then they will tell you directly, you go up 2 over 1, and it will look like this for the m. So the m equals, this means that I go up 2 and I go to the right 1. So that's giving you the slope of the line, or the m, and then rise over run is just to remember that's how we explain it, okay? How it is determined is by finding one spot. Usually there is a location, either the y-intercept, or if you happen to be starting at the origin, it will be that one point where the x and the y are crossing, and from that point you just describe what happened. So I went up 2 and I went over 1. I went up 2 and over 1, up 2 and over 1, up 2 and over 1, up 2 and over 1. And so that is what they're talking about on how it's determined. How to check it, this is where we get into visual reminders. And here are some ways to describe the rate of change and to check it. And this type of diagram I just found off of the internet, and I tried to pick a cute, funny one to help you remember. But what you need to know is that there's 4 different types of steepness or slants to a line. If you have a line that is starting up high and then going down as you go to the right of your screen, that is called a negative slope because you're going downhill. So when you find negative numbers, you find them by going down. And so this line is going down. Positive slope takes place when you think about you start at a number and it goes up. It's increasing. All of the numbers that you find that are increasing are either on the top side of the coordinate plane or to the right of the coordinate plane. So that's called a positive slope. An undefined slope is what we were talking about in class.
Laurel, first now.
Sorry.
If you're in the building, Laurel, first now. If you're in the building, please come to the front office. Thank you.
Undefined slope is the slope that is determined when you receive an error. So you remember when you have y multiplied by a coefficient of 0, you get an undefined line because an undefined line is a vertical line. We can't define the slope because it's not slanted at all. It's straight up and down, so we can't define the slope. So undefined slope is when your coefficient that you multiply by the y is 0. Zero slope means that there's no elevation to it at all. It's just a straight line. And it's not lifted on one side. It's not falling down on one side. There's no slope to it at all, no steepness to it all. And the number in mathematics that equals no is 0. So that's why we call it zero slope. Okay? And so these are the 4 different kinds of slope, and you saw those a little bit in our drawings that we did today. It's really important if you can get these into your brain because the sooner you can recognize that, okay, if the line looks like this, it's negative. If the line looks like this, no matter where it is on a graph, it's positive. If a line is vertical, it has an undefined slope. And if it's a horizontal line, it has a 0 slope because there's no slope to it whatsoever. These are the directions that slopes slant. These slopes are determined by the sign of the slope. So when you're looking in the equation, y equals mx plus b, all 4 types of lines are directly affected by your slope. Okay? So a negative slope, if it's a negative slope, then your numbers that are your m have to have a negative connected to it. If it's a positive slope, then your numbers connected to your m have to be a positive value. Undefined slope means that you have a coefficient of 0 being multiplied by the y. It also means that you can divide by 0. So the undefined slope, the way you could remember it, undefined slope is determined when you take any number and you divide it by 0, because any number divided by 0 is going to give you error. And if there's an error, that means it can't be defined. It's undefined. And then 0 slope is determined when your slope has no movement at all. So it's 0. It's not moving. Okay? So your slope in a negative line has to be negative. Your slope in a positive line has to be positive. Your slope in an undefined line has to have 0 as the denominator, which gives you an error, so therefore we can't define it. And then your m in a 0 slope line has to be 0 because there's no slope, there's no steepness. Okay? All right, so going back to our goal one more time, today we will discuss what slope is, how it is determined, and how to check it. I think we just went over that pretty well. What does slope mean, and is there a specific way to remember it? The answer to that, slope, is how the line changes. Okay? Does it rise? Does it fall? Does it go to the left? Does it go to the right? So how the line changes. And the specific way to remember it is that you need to remember that the slope is the M. The M describes how the line is changing, and so the M is what slope is. Okay? All right, kiddos, that's all I have for you today. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.